Good afternoon and welcome to Clearwater Jazz Holiday Foundation's Young Lion Jazz Master Virtual Sessions. Today's educator is going to be Alejandro Arenas, and what I love about Francois Moutin, part of the What I Love About series. Participants are muted upon entry and during the master class. We appreciate your cooperation to remain muted for the courtesy of others. If you have any specific questions, please feel free to use the chat feature in the toolbar to ask a question, and the educators will reserve some time to answer the questions. We hope you enjoy today's sessions. More upcoming free sessions will be posted at www.clearwaterjazz.com/education. Remember, your feedback and any future session topic suggestions are welcome. So please email us at info@clearwaterjazz.com. Also, be sure to check out the studio archive of past video sessions at clearwaterjazz.com's education and outreach section. Brought to you by Blue Water Wealth Management at Stewart Partners and Duke Energy, as well as the Young Lion podcast available wherever you stream. Brought to you by our friends at Marine Max Clearwater. Search Young Lion's Jazz Master Virtual Session. So we have a very good treat today. Of course, Alejandro is not a visitor to the Clearwater Jazz Sessions. I want to tell you just a little bit about some of the sessions that we've enjoyed so far. We've had bass sessions, an approach to playing swing, funk, and more. Bass styles, an approach to playing Brazilian and Latin grooves. History of rhythm section, collaboration among artists. This was a great one. Musical composition, approaches and ideas, part 1 and 2. Fun with arranging, part 2. And what I love about Wilbur Ware and what I love about Oscar Pettiford. That was a great one. I really enjoyed that one as well. So just to tell you a little bit about Alejandro before we jump into this amazing session, Alejandro was born in Colombia, where he started his musical career playing flamenco and classical guitar. He picked up the bass while he attended the College of Bogota, where he performed in the salsa and Andean music ensemble, as well as the school's orchestra. During his high school years, he performed with different independent bands with styles ranging from salsa, blues, rock, and heavy metal. Upon graduating high school, he moved to Gainesville, Florida. There, he worked as a freelance musician while being exposed to different genres such as reggae, jazz, and funk. He earned an AA in music studies from Santa Fe Community College, where he worked unpacking books in the morning, studying during the day, and playing gigs by night. In the midst of the chaotic time in his life, he developed a deep love for jazz, which drove him to learn to play the upright bass. He holds a Bachelor's of Music in Jazz Performance and a Master's of Music from the University of South Florida. During his studies at USF, he toured Italy, France, and Germany with the Jazz Ensemble One and the Jazz Tech performing at different jazz festivals. He also, this is awesome, if you probably know him from this place. He's an adjunct professor for the Myra program at St. Pete College. Alejandro is very active as a versatile performer working with many artists. He also co-leads the award-winning group La Lucha. So Alejandro, the stage is all yours.
All right, thank you so much, Michael. So today we're going to talk about Francois Moutin, and I'll just get started right with the slideshow here. All right, Francois Moutin. Of this series of basses that I've done so far, this is the first non-American one. And he was born in Paris, France on December 24, 1961. And he has a very unique approach to playing, which caught my ear the very first time I heard him. I will show you some examples, and part of it is because he, at the age of 5, he started playing guitar. then learned piano at the age of 11, and as a teenager he began to play the bass and was largely self-taught. So he didn't really have a lot of guidance in terms of that, which allowed him to kind of develop a very unique style and approach to the instrument, as we're going to see. In addition to that, he received a doctorate in physics at the age of 24, but chose to become a professional musician. My good friend John O'Leary, a pianist for La Lucha, actually did something similar. He got a doctorate in neuroscience, but he's a professional musician. So smart people. At the age of 27, he joined Marshall Solal, who is one of the most important, he's a pianist and one of the most important exponents of jazz in Europe and France particularly. He was one of those guys that, along with Pierre Michelot and some other guys that were working in the 50s and 60s, he's in his 80s, almost 90 now. But he got to work with Miles and a lot of other traveling musicians that were passing through France in the 50s and 60s. So that a lot of his concept actually developed from, a lot of Francois's concept, an approach to music developed from working with Marshall Solal for many years. He moved to New York in November of 1997, and he continues to be an important presence in the city's jazz scene. He's played in every club, and he, because of being in New York and also very active in Europe, he has played with artists as diverse as Toots Thielemans, Jimmy Heath, Mike Stern, Harry Belafonte, Bob Burke. If you know, all of those are very, very, very different artists, and it just shows the versatility that Francois has. And he also co-leads a group with his brother Louis, who plays drums. They're twins, actually. You're going to see in the videos. They play on a bunch of those together. And Louis was actually the drummer in the trio with Marshall Solal. So they both joined Marshall when he was 27, as I mentioned earlier. And what I'm... well, actually, he is also very active in doing kind of different projects, like duo projects specifically. He just released an album a couple of years ago with a singer named Kavita Shah. I believe she was born in New York, but her family is from India. And they have a very cool duet thing that they do. And he also does a lot of duets with his brother. We're going to watch a little bit of that. So what I love about Francois Moutin particularly is his freedom of playing. He really is not bound by the role of the instrument and really takes the freedom that jazz allows to extraordinary places. He has... I put here that he has an unorthodox command of the instrument. And what I mean by that is that his technique is very different. He actually, you'll see on the videos that he rarely, if ever, uses his pinky, which is kind of an essential part when you're of the cimento technique, which is kind of the more widely accepted or used technique on upright bass. He doesn't really use that on the lower register. He uses a lot of the first and second finger in a way. It kind of reminds me a little bit of the situation that Django Reinhardt, the great gypsy guitarist, had, where he had an accident and couldn't really use his ring and pinky fingers, but he could still play the guitar extremely well, one of the all-time greats. That didn't deter him. So Francois, being that maybe because he was self-taught, developed a very unique technique. So, but he uses the entire register of the instrument many times within like a bar, as you'll see. He has a deep understanding of bebop and modern jazz vocabulary, and he uses some avant-garde or out devices to create a very unique sound. That's really part of what makes him Francois Moutin. And as you'll see, I'll show you some specific examples to expand on that. He has a very rich rhythmic vocabulary too. Very precise with his rhythms. He superimposes complex polyrhythms over simple meters to create tension and release. And really, what I love is his approach to jazz. He's always listening. So anything that's really happening around within the band, he's reacting to. He's very reactive. He's really, he can follow the role of the standard bass, as a supportive instrument, but he really kind of takes this Col-La-Far approach to it, which is much more interactive with the piano and the drums or whoever else is in the band, really. So he's not always just bound by playing the root. And like I said, a lot of his use of the entire range of the instrument is kind of what allows him to do that. But he doesn't really abandon the form or the chord changes or the melody completely. He does depart from it, but as you'll see in some of these examples that I'm going to show you next, he always kind of comes back to it. So this is from a concert in 1993. He was very young here, I believe 32 years old, 31, 32. And that's his brother on drums there. And this is with Toots Thielemans playing harmonica, sitting in with the Marshall Solal trio. And one thing that I wanted to observe here, now that we have the still of the video, is his stance. He's sitting down on a stool, and he actually has the bass almost like leaning on his lap, the top of the bass. Looks like a fairly large instrument too, which may have to do with the way he's holding it, but as you'll see in some of the later videos, he changed that stance completely. And both, this is more of a classical stance actually. Some bass players like to do that. Some bass players have like a curved end pit that allows them to kind of get this type of angle that he's using there, and sometimes that just, these stance is good, or this position on the bass is good to access the upper register of the bass a little bit more efficiently, which is something he is going to do. So what I'm going to show you here, this is all the things you are, and it picks up at the last chorus of Marshall Solal's solo. And so kind of pay attention to how he interacts with Marshall, and then what he plays. I'll play a little bit of his solo as well, of Francois' solo. So as you can see, a very kind of unorthodox approach in terms of he's playing his left hand in particularly, but he's got chops. But he also has he has a lot of interaction. I mean, you can hear his brother on drums there too. He's not just keeping time; he's really interacting with him quite a bit rhythmically. But he started his solo just quoting the melody of All the Things You Are, and he kind of has this tendency to go in and out of the melody and playing more melodic and then having these crazy runs and all that. So I'm going to show you another video. This is with Martial Solal as well, and this is from a few years later, 2007, and you'll see his stance has changed considerably on the bass here. And the part that I'm going to play you here is it's interesting because this is a song called "The Last Time I Saw Paris," and they're just trading force here between the three members of the band. So it starts with Francois, and you'll hear here, and I'll let you listen and watch, and I'll talk about it a little bit. So one thing that I love about that video is how all of a sudden, out of nowhere, they just get, Louis just sets up the time and they just start swinging like crazy. Obviously the trading was very free. Nobody was really keeping audible time. And if you can hear Martial, how his approach influences what Francois is playing. Because he's kind of going in and out of the melody. In this particular example, you could hear a little bit more of the outplaying that Francois had. But the thing that's connecting everything is that the melody is really floating amongst the three of them constantly. You can actually see them kind of bobbing their head even when there's no time going on. So that the melody is there, the form is there. That's why they know how to come in right in the right place. So the next one I'm going to show you is with a different trio, a little bit more, not quite as adventurous, I would say, as the Martial Solal trio. And by the way, he played with the first time I heard Francois Moutin play was with a great pianist who also happens to have like a doctorate in like I don't remember what it is, to be honest. Jean-Michel Pilk, another French pianist, also based in New York. And the first time I heard him playing, it was Francois with Jean-Michel Pilk and Ari Honig. My good friend Mark Feynman, drummer for La Lucha, he actually did one of these series and what I love about Ari Honig. And that group just had an interaction that was just second to none. And it was kind of an extension of the Martial Solal trio in a sense, but it was more egalitarian, if you will. All voices were very strong in it. But sometimes more adventurous even than Martial Solal. But this next one is Dan Tapfer, who's a kind of modern jazz pianist based in New York, I believe, as well. And this is from an original tune of his. And again, with some of these solos, it's a little bit hard because I'm just showing you the solos, so you haven't really had the context of the melody and the form of the song. So it's, without the context, jumping from skipping the entire head and going to the solo is harder to appreciate how they got there, because that's the other part that's important. They don't just start a song and start playing out, you know. So this next one, so like I said, Roadrunner, I'll let you listen to it, and you can listen for the rhythmic variety of when he plays his solo and his interaction with the drummer. Oops, sorry. This is skipping for some reason. Let me try to do it from here. There we go. Yeah, so he just has a clarity of sound and an approach that's really cool. You know, there's a point where he starts playing this really rhythm, and he's right there with the drummer too. The drummer's like kind of playing a little bit on the rims of the toms, creating a little bit of the subdivision, and you hear his attack on the right hand is just right on. And you can see actually how he slides a lot up the bass with, instead of using shifts, he just plays with one finger straight, because the bass, you don't have frets, of course, so you can, anytime you slide the finger, you're going to get a different pitch. So you can actually just slide your finger out, kind of like a trombone in a slide, and get pitch change, and he kind of uses it that way, but he's still very precise just doing that. Sometimes he does it just for the fast kind of chromatic runs that he does, but then sometimes he actually just plays a line, like a melodic line, that way too. So as you can hear, this trio is much more structured. And he still has a little bit of that approach. It's not quite as interactive in terms of, the form is much more stable, if you will. And his rhythmic variety is just great. So now the next one I'm going to show you. Oops, now it's playing. Okay, so this next one is a more current one. It's the drummer's record, actually. Well, it is credited to Panier, Goldberg, and Moutin. And it's Aaron Goldberg is a New York-based pianist who's done a bunch of records, great pianist. And I didn't know Rafael Panier until I watched this video, but I really dig what he's doing. And with this trio, and again, he kind of finds himself, Francois finds himself a lot in these situations where you get a highly interactive group of musicians, and he's just right there. This is kind of what he does best. I mean, I've seen him in situations where he's just kind of playing the role of the bass in a standard way. He can do that really well too. But this is to me my favorite part about him. And notice how sometimes he's just kind of playing certain elements that are not necessarily chord changes or melodic lines, but he's kind of just playing the sound of the instrument, if that makes any sense. It's like kind of like when a drummer hits a different part of the drum set that's not like the head. He kind of does the same thing with the bass. He creates like one of the licks that I call it a lick, but one of the things that he does is like this thing where he uses his thumb to strum the strings, and he just goes up with two fingers. I think he's going to do it on this video again. It's kind of a Francois Moutin signature thing. I think he got it from somebody else, but we all got something from somebody else. But in any case, it's something that I hear him do quite a bit. And he does a little bit differently on this one. This is a little bit longer clip. It's about 2 minutes long, but he takes the first solo on this. And now keep in mind, this is over a blues form. So it's a much simpler form than some of the other stuff that we heard. But check out his approach. So you're going to hear some kind of boppish lines with some blues in there and kind of his signature chromatic fast runs and stuff like that. So check it out. His headphones. There's that lick. So some great interaction there between the players, and really he's just a monster on the bass. He just has this approach. I mean, you can see at some point on the video his headphones just like start falling down. He's just going for it. You know, that's something that I love about his playing. That's just he's always committed. He's always in the song. He's just has this, you know, for aggressive, for lack of a better word, approach to the instrument, which inspired me a lot. Michael in my bio actually mentioned that I used to play some heavy metal. And when I started playing jazz, that was one of the things that I wanted to try to do, kind of bring some of the energy and heaviness of that you could find when playing, that intensity of heavy metal, to bring it into jazz in that sense, you know. And that's kind of what when I hear Francois Moutin, I kind of hear that he's even though he has really good chops and everything, there's this rawness to it and to his sound and his approach that's really appealing to me. You know, it's unexpected. You kind of never know where things are going to go, and you know, that's a very cool thing. I'm going to show you one last clip here, and this is actually a duet with his brother. Little different from all the stuff that I've shown you. Again, you know, go back and check out the entire videos of this, because it's just really cool to see how they got to the point that I'm showing you now. And this one is going to be the head of the tune, or the melody of the tune, a little bit of his solo. And this is kind of an impromptu thing that he was doing with his brother at a thing in New York. It wasn't a particular well, they did a concert, but it was a kind of a meeting that they were doing. So it was kind of an impromptu thing that they did. And this was actually the first duet they ever recorded together, which kind of became a traditional thing. And he's recorded this with a couple of different people, but his arrangement's the same. It's a very arranged thing, actually. His soloing is improvised, but the way he plays the melody it's heavily arranged, very, very well arranged. So I'll let you listen to it and talk a little bit about it. So there, they get more adventurous. This is actually kind of a good example of how they get to like that more interactive space. So you heard the melody, he's outlining the chords really in a melodic way, so arpeggiated and melodic way. So it's kind of playing long arpeggios on the bass, but putting the melody at the top. It happens to work, the rhythm of the melody works really well, especially if they do it with that kind of a samba-ish feel. And it's, I learned this for one of my recitals back in college, and it is a monster to learn, but it's a lot of fun. And one thing that I wanted to point out in a lot of these kind of interactive styles of playing, where you're kind of abandoning the chord changes at certain points and really kind of finding, really interacting with each other in ways that you're pushing the form, there's always the thing that unites everything is the melody. It's going throughout the whole thing, but there's also rhythmic stuff that happens throughout. In this particular video, they have the melody starts on the end of 2. You're feeling this in 2/4, like a samba. 1, 2, 1, 2, ah. They have a melody. Like melody starts ba. So they have that hit every time they on the end of 2 when a new phrase is going to start, and during the soloing, they always hit that together. So that's kind of a meeting point, and it's also a really cool way to kind of play with. It kind of creates this cool thing of like you're going separate ways and you're kind of exploring all this crazy space, and all of a sudden you meet in the middle, and somehow that brings in the listener like, oh, okay, that's something familiar, and somehow they know where they are. I think to me that's kind of the appealing thing of this, that is it's what's happening inside their brain that allows them to get somewhat far departed in certain cases, not always, but be able to explore. go and explore. So that's the last clip. And just the conclusion of this is, for me, Francois Moutin is really a great representative of modern jazz. He can swing and adhere to the more traditional elements of the genre, but at the same time, he's kind of looking to break new ground through his commitment to an improvisational style or an approach, really. And he's really committed to it. He's not shy about taking chances and going places and kind of being fearless, if you will. He is kind of a good example of learning the rules to break them and then create great music. So in other words, what makes this effective is that he knows the chord changes. He knows what the right notes are. He knows how to play inside. He knows how to play the melody of the tune. But then he uses atonal or kind of out elements in a very musical way, because he uses that to create tension, to kind of say, like, I'm exploring the form. I'm really pushing this to its limit, but then I'm going to bring it back. And sometimes he does that with the rhythm, like I was mentioning in the last example. And because of this is not everyone's cup of tea or favorite jazz to listen to. Rule number one: never read the comments on YouTube. But when kind of revisiting some of these videos that I hadn't watched in a while, or some of them were new, it's always funny to see the comments of people that are like, oh, this is great, I love the energy, but I wish Francois wouldn't play so much in the upper register, blah 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 blah. That's fine. You're entitled to your own opinion about what works or not. That's particularly what I enjoy about Francois, that when I listen to Francois, I'm not listening to him recycle Oscar Pettiford licks. And I love Oscar Pettiford. That's why I did that last week. But that's the cool thing, that to me, he's just fresh. He's just trying these different things. And, that's the advantage that we have, that we can skip to another player when we get tired of another, or when we get tired is not a good term, but yeah, when we want to listen to something else. If you want to listen to something that's more more bop-ish or swinging in the traditional sense, great. There's plenty of great musicians that represent that. And it's really cool. I really highly recommend that you check out his duet album with Kavita Shah, the singer. It's called Interplay. Very cool stuff. Because he knows how to align the chord changes really well on the bass, and that's really a place where we can hear his sound very well. Some of the elements that he uses to kind of push the envelope of things is, tempo shifts. There's a really, really cool recording of him with the Jean-Michel Pilk trio of Stella by Starlight that actually starts as a bass feature where Francois is playing the melody. And the clip was too long to show it here, but what they do is that every chorus they play, they get faster and faster, and it's kind of magical the way they make it happen, because they're really, really tight and it's a tempo shift, kind of feeling different rhythms. And he uses polyrhythms. He uses very large interval jumps, so it kind of gives it this disjuncted sound, but it kind of brings a different sound of the bass that you're not used to hearing so much. He uses rhythmic displacement and other devices that are really kind of effective uses of music. And part of it is because you have to use that stuff deliberately or very in a very committed way in order to make it work. If you're not committed to it, I'll say this. I found in college a lot of people that decided to kind of play out because they couldn't play in. And that to me kind of, okay, yeah, I'm not judging people, but, if that's how you get to that, cool. But to me, it's refreshing to hear players that can really play really well inside the melody and really go out and explore and then come back in and still respect the melody and not abandon the form completely. And I think it's important to, one of the things in the conclusion I put here is always listen. Well, he's always listening. I think it's important to stress that the spirit of jazz is rooted in listening to each other while you're on the bandstand. You are creating something that's larger than the individual parts and of the band, whatever that is. So I think when Francois is paired with the right musicians, this magic can happen. I mean, I wouldn't. Well, this is not to say that he couldn't jump in and play with a more traditional band and still sound great, but maybe that would force him to be more of something he playing in a way that he doesn't want to play. I think this is very important to keep in mind, because within jazz there's a lot of subgenres, if you will, or different eras that you can play in. And I've been on gigs where I've been asked to play in the style of a certain player, which is great. But to be honest, it's not my favorite thing to do. Because throughout the years you work as a musician to develop your own sound, and of course your own sound is a combination of all of your influences coming through the filter in my case of Alejandro, and I think that's very important. So that means you do have to study other people, you do have to check out other people, you have to listen to other people in order to finally come to, or not finally, because I think that's an ongoing process throughout your entire life. But to get to a point where you feel like you have your sound. And I think that's what we as musicians want the most, So to me, that's a very cool thing about Francois. When I heard him, he's like, okay, he has a sound. I can hear him within 2 bars and I know it's Francois Moutin playing. And that's a really cool thing. I think, you either love it or you hate it or you are indifferent to it. Particularly, I love his playing. I love a lot of the projects that he's in. And yes, sometimes the music can be a little bit heady, can be a little bit, hard to get into if you're not in the right frame of mind, and I say that honestly because I try not to listen music as just a musician. I try to listen to music like a listener does. So, which is for the enjoyment of listening to a musician, not to criticize the music or to analyze the music sometimes. In my experience, and that sometimes gets a little bit tiresome, to have to listen to music from a completely analytical way. And I do get jealous sometimes of people that are able to just hear the music unrelated to knowing what's going on and still enjoy it. So in any case, that's my presentation of Francois Moutin. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you check some of his stuff out. He has a lot of stuff. He's played with a lot of different people. And yeah, that's what I got.
So, wow, Alejandro, that was very informative. I've learned a great deal about Francois's music today. So we want to thank you for all the research and time you put into that to introduce us to that. We do have a couple questions come in, but one thing I really love is the uniqueness of their sound. My goodness. I hear so many influences and genres infused in their sound. I tend to call him a musician's musician, meaning that you could be in a room and hear this, and the musicians in the room are saying, wow, did you hear that? And maybe somebody that's not as trained may say, what are you talking about? So we're hearing 2 different performances in the room. So the question is, how long would you say it takes to build musical chemistry like that with the group that he used to play with his brother? And I mean, how long does it take to develop that? And I know you're part of a group and you guys have had years of playing. What do you think, what's the formula to develop something like that?
Yeah, that's a great question. Honestly, it can be almost instantaneous if everybody's in the right mindset. Or it could take years, for people to kind of agree on a concept. I think the important thing is that you are like-minded in terms of what you want out of the music. That doesn't necessarily mean that Well, I'll give you a funny kind of example. Mark and Mark Feynman of Lucha, and I were playing this gig, kind of a similar approach to what you saw in some of these videos, very kind of interactive, out-ish, avant-garde-ish kind of music. You know, there was a melody, there was all this stuff, but it was with this pianist that he kind of like, I like to call him kind of he had this approach of kind of between Monk and Keith Jarrett, in the sense of he was very kind of had these, he didn't have like super great chops, but he had a really cool rhythmic and melodic concept. And he wanted kind of the freedom that Keith Jarrett had, in terms of like there was a form and there's a tune that we're playing, but there's no specific arrangement. You know, we're going to end it differently every time or something like that. So that's kind of what I thought of him as. And we were playing this kind of out thing, and Dick Hyman, you know, living jazz legend, happened to see us that day. A few months later, we had the opportunity to be on a concert bill with Dick Hyman. It was a tribute to Bob Seymour, actually, retired WUSF DJ in the area, or programmer actually, and Dick Hyman said that he would be happy to do the concert if he could play with Mark and I. So the only time he had seen us play was really this out stuff, you know, like very interactive, kind of like, you know, I don't think I walked for more than 2 bars in that. And, you know, Dick Hyman is 93, 94 years old. So he comes from an era where he played with Charlie Parker. His idol is still Art Tatum. So he comes from a completely different era. But the beautiful thing about him is that he's always open to learning. He's always just open to new things. So he heard us play. He said, like, I want to play with these guys because they're listening. And we didn't know, honestly. We went to his house. We're at this living jazz legend's house, and we just met him. And he wants to play with us, and we don't know how to approach things. And it's funny because he just said, like, first thing he said before he put his hands on the piano, he said, I don't want you guys to have any preconceived notions. And he just started playing. You know, and it was very cool because he has incredible ears and he's so inventive. And though we never kind of took it as out as we did with other people, there was still a very highly interactive situation, and he was happy to do that. He was happy to sometimes lead, sometimes to let one of us take over. So in that case, you know, we had kind of a pretty nice chemistry going on because we had an idea of what he kind of gave us an idea of which it's funny because it's kind of ironic because he didn't really tell us what he wanted, but he just said no preconceived notions, which means kind of, to me, he didn't want us to sit there thinking this is Dick Hyman playing the piano. He just wanted us to listen to the music and go where the music took us. And to me, you know, the first time I played with Mark, personally, I had that feeling of we just understand each other, whatever the style is. And to this day, Mark and I can just switch somehow on a dime. We can just like switch from one style to the other we just look at each other and we just know something's going to happen. And with Mark, it was kind of instantaneous. But it happens sometimes when you go to a gig and you play with a group of people you've never played with and things just start happening. And I've found a lot of times is that if they're trusting what you're doing and they're listening to what you're doing, and they allow you to be part of the conversation, then things will happen. A quick example, sometimes I found myself with playing with pianists who want me to play their chord changes. You know, if I throw a substitution on the bass, they'll give me a look like, we're not going there. I'm like, okay. So now I know that's the gig, and they want me to follow them, and that's fine. As long as I understand that, we can make good music happen. And then I've played with pianists who would just like modulate on me, and I'm like, trying to chase to see what's happening, and then I realized like, okay, it's that kind of gig. So let me suggest this thing, and then he's like, yeah, I dig that. So it's very cool when you kind of find that. Again, I don't see one thing is better than the other, but I think the mindset of the musician is good. And sometimes I like to communicate that to people that, sometimes Mark can make it to a gig, so we have a drummer sub in, or John can make it to a gig and we have a pianist sub in. And what we try to tell them is like, man, don't do your thing. Do your thing. Just play the way you want to play. And I remember there was a pianist in the area, Adolfo Mendonça from Brazil, who we had never played with before. John got sick at the last minute. He came in and we just had we found like this chemistry with him, but it was completely different from what we do with John. It was more kind of Adolfo just realized we had good ears and he just felt free to try all these different things. So we did 2 or 3 gigs with him. They were all a lot of fun and all different, but it was all Brazilian music too. So it was completely different vibe, but it worked, So I guess it's a long answer with a lot of information there, but it's sometimes it's fast, sometimes it takes years to develop a concept.
Awesome answer. So we want to thank you again for this great session. We highly recommend that everyone go out and listen to more of Francois's music, do your own research, become fans of this lovely genre of music that we all love. And we love the diversity of it. It's not just here in the States, it's all over the world. So we love this music. So continue to bring people in, spread the word of all the great things that's happening here at Clearwater Jazz with our education outreach with these master sessions. And we hope to see you at the next one. Thank you again, Alejandro. And we'll see everyone on the next one. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you. You guys too.